Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to our channel, and thanks for logging on. Today, we're discussing the latest iteration of the Audemars Piguet Royal Oak Chronograph. The current production model, reference 26331OR, launched at SIHH 2017 on the 20th anniversary of the Royal Oak Chronograph. You can see and you can purchase this haut de gamme integrated automatic chronograph on our website. Subscribe to our YouTube channel if you enjoy these videos, and please click on the card in the upper right-hand corner of the screen at any time during this video to see our full sales listing for this luxury chronograph with additional accessories included in the sale, high-resolution images for your desktop, and naturally complete pricing details for this 41mm rose gold Royal Oak chronograph. Now, it's not the Offshore, and frankly, given the mass of the case and the stance on the wrist, you won't miss the big brother of the traditional Royal Oak. Now, for 20 years of the Royal Oak chronograph, Audemars Piguet made some subtle changes to the dial of the 41mm reference. We first saw the 41mm chronograph in 2012, but that reference refined and in many respects improved over its initial iterations, has the exterior dimensions but a better balanced dial than the initial 41 chrono. The watch here features the rare galvanized blue dial generally reserved for marquee dealers and Audemars Piguet factory boutiques, and it is immense in its presence, its striking contrast, and its sheer level of artisanal detail matched against the gold registers, hands, and indices. Now, on my wrist, I said you wouldn't miss the Offshore, and that's because the 41 Royal Oak effectively wears like a 42 Offshore. It's big and it's broad, though 41mm across the round of the case from 9 to 3. That's not including crown guards, chronograph pushers, or crown. The watch is broad across the wrist. It's the stance and the integration of the bracelet that makes the watch feel and, in fact, look much larger. The watch is a substantial measurement across the wrist at 51.6mm lug-to-lug, but when you include these intermediate plots, these intermediate links that join the bracelet to the case, now you have a rigid horizontal span. You can see how I can't bend that down. That span is 54.6mm, so we are talking about a large watch here. In terms of clearing a cuff, you'll have no trouble because 11mm is the petite dimension of the watch. It's the smallest measurement, and rightly so for a high horology piece. Integrated automatic column wheel vertical clutch chronograph, well cased. This will clear any dress cuff thanks to the rounded profile of the octagonal bezel. A sleeve will simply ramp up and over. Now, about the heft of the watch, that really needs to be described in greater detail. If you've ever worn a full platinum Rolex Day-Date or the rare 2013 to present platinum anniversary Daytona from Rolex, this rose gold Audemars Piguet feels as heavy as that platinum Rolex. Audemars Piguet shorts you no gold. I would imagine that the people who created the patent to allow Apple to get the 18 karat gold rating on the Apple Watch edition while using the least possible gold would have had no role in crafting this kind of watch at Audemars Piguet. So I would imagine the rejects from AP who used too little gold wound up going to Apple to create the edition. This is a watch that puts you in awe at the heft on the wrist. It is comfortable, however. Don't think that it's uncomfortable simply because it's hefty. It's more of a satisfying premium pull. Now, in contrast to Apple, Audemars Piguet gives you broad and massive individual gold links that are nicely finished on the underside. This is where experience counts, and AP's been making these bracelets since 1972. You can see that there are plenty of gaps to aerate the wrist, just as there are broad channels between the links. The channels on the top and the channels on the bottom create plenty of channels, airways, pockets, and opportunities for heat, moisture, sweat, and grit to simply escape the wrist, while at the same time the hollows prevent pinching of skin or pulling of hair. Now, of course, the bracelet is sized with screws. This isn't the Patek Philippe Nautilus, no pins and sleeves here. The bracelet is nicely skeletonized and handsomely finished with a contrasting bead blasted on the inside or sandblasted and a satin finish about the chassis itself. Now, when it's closed, it's quite low in profile. To minimize desk diving damage, it does feature twin trigger release, which I like because it means you can't simply pop this open by accident, so a forceful swing of the arm or an emergency evasion maneuver to avoid a doorknob is not going to yank the watch open as some friction fit clasp will. This is sports watch grade stuff. And so is the fixture of the bracelet to the watch itself, as you can see, the plots are retained by screws. This is how it should be done on every expensive and heavy sports watch. There's no room for spring bars here either. Unfortunately, Audemars Piguet does things the right way. Now, I talk about the amount of gold you get, but it's not just the gold that you're getting. You're getting a lot of that. You're getting a lot of hand-finished gold. As you can see, everything that is polished, everything that is satin finished is executed by hand, and when you have an integrated case, lug, and bracelet, that's where the eye of the artisan really comes into play and pays dividends. As you can see how this hairline bevel swells as it approaches the lug hoods, swells again, and continues seamlessly down and along the periphery of the satin finished links of the bracelet. The bevel continues seamlessly from case to lug to bracelet, unbroken. You'll also note that the plots themselves actually have polished edges, polished interior edges, and you can see that they catch the light in dramatic fashion as you roll the bracelet and expose those polished inner surfaces. Of course, the bezel is the defining feature of a Royal Oak, and you can see the countersunk white gold bezel bolts, hexagonal. They are white gold, and they're polished in contrast to the satin finish of the bezel itself. You'll also note the mark of any Royal Oak unfinished or minimally refinished will be the slight countersink, the slight recess of the bolts within the bezel. I'm going to try to open up the aperture and brighten things up a bit so you can see the gleam of the polished indices and hands in rose gold. Now, the dial did change a bit for 2017. There were some changes to the indices, some changes to the location of the date window, but the primary change was the alteration of the registers to enlarge the chronograph counters. You can see the jump of the minute counter, its opposite number, the hour counter, and then de-emphasize the constant seconds by shrinking that register at 6 o'clock. The other thing that I want to call out is that the contrast between the rose gold and the beautiful navy blue galvanized metallic finish of the hobnail tapisserie display is dramatic and exquisite. It's actually a tritone dial with white on the indices as well as dial printing in the date. You have white on the hands at center, rose gold for hands and registers, and of course the frames of the hand-applied rose gold indices. It is a very potent combination. This is a watch that has all of the visual punch, presence, and wrist stance of an Offshore, but in a much thinner package. Which you'll also note is the continuity of line. Look how the crease of the bezel continues seamlessly into the case flank and into the case back. Take a look at the dished profile of the registers. They actually have a little bit of a step outboard, concentric circles with the inside being a guilloche pattern and the outside being a textured metallic circular satin grain with black on gold printing for high contrast. Even at that level, you have immense detail, and it gets better. As if you look at the hobnail of the tapisserie under a 10-power loop, a 12-power loop, a 20-power loop, you'll see that not only are there the macro hobnail forms, but the 19th century pantograph machine used to cut this dial creates a very subtle texture on top of the hobnails and within the channel between them. There's a great deal of second-order detail available for your viewing pleasure if you get closer and under greater magnification, explore this dial the way you would a fine Swiss movement. Now, inside is a automatic winding 40-hour power reserve, Frederic Piguet 1185, doing business in Audemars Piguet form. But the bottom line is that it is an integrated column wheel vertical clutch ultra-thin automatic chronograph. It is a high horology caliber that I recommend without any reservation, as it's essentially been trouble-free, set it and forget it. Having been produced since approximately 1986, this is a well-proven movement that is finished to a high standard. Beautifully executed. It does have the luxury of both a vertical clutch and a column wheel, and the pushers that appear to be screw downs, the crown is, the pushers are not. They allow for instantaneous activation and actuation. Because of the vertical clutch of the caliber, there's no jump when you start the movement. And because it does feature a vertical clutch with no additional wear or tear when in operation, unlike a lateral clutch, you can leave this chronograph operating with the chronograph on continuously. There's no risk. It's not going to shorten your maintenance interval. There's no additional hazard to the movement. There is a quick set for the date. The movement, which beats away at 21,600 vibrations per hour, has the 40-hour power reserve. It does not have a hacking seconds function. That might be its one downfall and the one sign of its age. However, I will say that the column wheel action is very crisp and very rewarding. It has the kind of pusher feel one would associate with the likes of a Longa 1 date adjuster or even a datograph. A beautiful watch day or night. Stay tuned because there's going to be a lume shot. The best way to get the most out of this watch is to enjoy it frequently and on your wrist. While it has a distinctly Miami Beach vibe about it, anyone would be proud and stylish in this watch regardless of longitude or latitude. See it on our website and find out why. Who needs a Royal Oak Offshore? Audemars Piguet Royal Oak Chronograph, reference 26331OR. See it on our website.